our next discussion, which will be about Lynn Decoite. I think that, again, our mission for the Maui Pono Network is to inform the public of all the candidates who are running. We want everyone to make informed decisions as to what's happening in the 2020 elections, especially as we look at what's happening, with the unknown of all the transitions, all the shifts that are occurring within our community. We need representation. And so who do we empower? And this is the question. So let's do that in a way where we're fully informed so that when you do go to the voting booth, or when you actually not voting booth, but as you sign your mail-in ballot, that you make the right decisions. Again, what's going to be happening on July 21st is when the primary ballots will be received. These primary ballots are crucial for all the state representative races. So again, because most of it, probably 95% of the races are determined based on who becomes the Democratic representative. And there may be some other changes that'll be happening. The Aloha Aina Party is also bringing in candidates who we will later interview also, so that we have a full display of all the different choices that you have and their positions and where they're coming from. So let's, our crew right now is going to talk a little bit about Lynn Decoite and her background as a state rep and some of the impact of her decisions. And we already got a little bit of insight into Lynn in terms of her leasing her lands to farming interests that are part of Monsanto or who are using Monsanto or now Bayer employees. So that's one aspect about this, and certainly for those who are concerned with genetically modified foods or spraying, certainly these are things that we need to be looking at in terms of what our representation is actually doing. So with that start, why don't we go ahead? You all have a list of Lynn's funding sources as well as some of her voting records. So why don't we begin? Who would like to start?
I can go ahead and start. First of all, Lynn ended up, I believe, in her last election cycle, pulling in $91,000. And out of those funds, 10%, there were in-state were 82,000, and 10% of her funds for out-of-state were 8,200. So as it stands, when you take a look at the list of campaign contributions, once again, this is one of the things that you run into with someone who has been kind of part of the well-oiled machine of the position of power. There are bundlers that, as long as Lynn has voted in a particular way with certain legislators who have other connections, she's invited to parties, they know that she's on a list to give the funds to, and the money rolls in. And this is the way that there's an insular way to ensure that anyone coming up to challenge a candidate like this has quite a bit, to work with. The interesting point about 13 is we don't get bought very easily. $90,000 here means nothing. I remember a time when Kimo Apana had over $600,000 and he lost his election to someone who had 56,000. So in this district, we really want to make sure that it's someone who's representative of this district. And when you have those type of funds coming in from outside, the main question that I would have for Lynn would be, who is paying you for the votes that you're taking in the legislature? Someone else may want to go ahead and kind of take a little more time with what's being listed. But that's one of my major concerns. This is a rural area, and a large portion of this area has great concerns about GMOs. And to understand that not only is she doing GMOs, but she's doing it on Hawaiian lands, that is really something to call to question. So, not being an Hawaiian, I wouldn't say whether it's right or wrong, but it's something that I definitely want to question. It does show something as to where she's going, and also the possibility that she's taking other people's leases and working with those as well. These are the questions I would have for Lynn is, are you taking other people's leases? Are you taking those leases and giving them to Monsanto as a subleasee? What's the truth here? This is something actually I think that perhaps it's time for investigative reporting to be done on, perhaps by some of the local newspapers, as to what is Lynn really doing with her lands? Is she saying one thing and doing something else? And if she is, then that calls to question whether what she's telling us as the public, as to her reasoning, as to her votes, if that's for real or not either. So I'm going to turn it over to someone else to drill a little further into the voting record. Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I'm going to bring to notice that originally she was not elected. She was appointed by the governor. There was a group of people who were presented to the governor as possibilities to fill her predecessor's role, and her predecessor was no longer able to be there. And so she was appointed by the governor. And then once you become an incumbent, it's hard for that to change. So it was like one of our other representatives who was not originally elected as a favor of the people. And and certainly, for me, the leasing of her lands, I mean, her family was a Molokai sweet potato farming family. And she gathered up leases from many others, because you can sell your leases to other people within that system. So she amassed a large piece of land, which was then turned over to Monsanto and now Bayer. And from my heart, how that can even be allowed, because this is, Hawaiian farmlands, and that type of farming practice is toxic. The amount of pesticides they're using on GMO seed corn is obscene, and that water leaches into their groundwater and into their reefs. And future generations on Molokai will have to deal with the damages caused by that when they finally leave. So this is a big one in my heart, and I would love to get her take about how that was. I wish she was here to ask those questions directly. But looking at her campaign sources, it's heavily, $2,000 longshoremen, plaster and cement masons, Council of Carpenters, Goodfellow Brothers Construction, another several Goodfellow Brothers Constructions who are in there, United Public Works Union, Molokai, Hawaiian Operating Engineers Industry. So you see, this was given to her, these funds, even though she didn't really have much of a campaign that she had to fight against. She didn't really have a significant challenger on last election. She easily won, being an incumbent. Lanai Resorts, and on and on it goes. Several lawyer people that are involved, Young Brothers. This is very industry, based, and a large amount of money coming from construction and shall we say, the old boy network. So that's what I see when I look. Hawaii Pest Control Association, there's a good one. So list goes on and on. Cattlemen's Action Fund. More Goodfellows brothers, different Goodfellows are all contributing.
If I could cut in for a second, the Goodfellows, Beverly Polly Moore, who ran for Maui County Council some period of time ago, is married to the general manager for Good Brothers on Goodfellows on Molokai. So that's probably where part of the funds are coming from. This is a real deep interconnected web of money and of power positions, which has the ability to obfuscate the truth of the person that's running. If you're in a densely packed, populated area, it's easier to tell who someone is. When you're in a scattered district like this, she's known, but I think this is the first time she's actually had some honest possibility of someone running against her who can actually run a campaign. So this is one of those interesting campaigns that's going to come up against, it's literally the people versus the position of power. This is going to be one of those extraordinary runs for this particular office. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in, but that link was something I thought was important.
That's okay. I'll share it on to the next person. Laura.
I wonder if I might. Yeah, just a quick thing to say, Laura. I'm gonna just say that when it comes to the record, saying one thing and doing another is an issue that we keep coming upon. As you said, when interests of the people or interests of big money is at stake, and when it comes to Miss Decoite's voting record here, it all comes back to transparency of the situation. And when you show up to vote on certain bills and then you don't show up again, especially these controversial bills, like HB 790, a pesticides bill, she voted yes and then missed the next floor. It seems to be a recurring pattern where voting on the first and then not showing up on the next, saying one thing but maybe perhaps doing another. Although when it comes to this one on SB 2609 that we've been looking at, was a controversial ethics bill that would have revoked the requirement of board and commission members to file financial statements. In other words, this bill would have opened the doors for people in these boards to receive financial gifts from lobbyists, perhaps without reporting. She voted yes and then voted no. So flipping the script, riding the fence, and just curious as to perhaps what changed her mind in that instance. So again, just things that would be nice if we can have a conversation with her. Linda Decoite, would love to have you on. Would love to pick your brain. Thank you, Mahalo. All right. Go
One
ahead,
other thing
Laura.
that's really interesting is she also voted on a controversial bill that would have made when we had the super ferry protests, where a lot of us were involved with, it would have made it a felony. So she voted for that. So we are looking at somebody, we have a real question as to whether we're looking at home rule, where the county, this is something that we've talked about over and over again, the need for the county to take back our own power, or does she believe in the power of the state government to usurp the power of our local powers as well? So this is another question that's also in there. Paul, do you have anything?
Yeah, Laura, I think you were next, so
Yes.
go ahead.
I apologize. I got the record
Yes.
wrong. Sorry about that, Laura.
Okay. All right. That's okay. That's okay. So if Lynn was here, I would ask her to explain why she wouldn't support Earth Justice suit to stop Maui County injection well pollution at our wastewater treatment plant. She was on the side of frackers, pipeline operators, chemical companies that joined Maui County fighting for the right to pollute our waters all over the nation. So that would be one thing that I would want to ask her about. And also I would want to talk to her about her long history of not supporting pesticide bills and not wanting to have voting for buffer zones around schools for children not to be infected by these poisons. And that's what I would like to talk to her about.
Well,
Anyone else?
yeah, thank you for that, Laura. And certainly, I think that there's a lot of issues that we would like to get clarity on. Mark Sheehan just joined us, but Mark, before we get you on and talk about Lynn, I just want to read a letter that I received from Lynn today. And it says, I apologize for the late notice, but I won't be able to participate this evening. As I am sure you're aware, I've been called back to the state capitol to address the state budget and the COVID-19 crisis. And then she later on said, I appreciate the Maui Pono Network taking the time to set up these interviews. At this time, my role as legislator has to make priority, so I can do this the best possible job to get as much needed work done. I just want to say that again, we had given Lynn 3 weeks notice of this interview. We had also communicated with her several times and just got the notice today. We would like to also extend, though, an interview for Lynn at some time that is convenient for her, and we can convene with our interview team, and we can then have an ability then to ask these questions and to post. But I think that regardless, though, of, with her not showing up right now, I think it's important that we get the information out, and we really try to do that in a way that's clear and balanced, that really reflects her funding sources and also her voting record. So, Mark, you've had some experience also with Lynn, and if you would like to then just talk a little bit about the way you look at this and versus someone like Walter Ritty.
Yeah, I went back and read her email, and I figured, well, she's not going to show up. You wouldn't be having an interview. So I got burned out at the Maui Tomorrow meeting, and I went for a swim. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I think Laura's question is a really good one. Lynn has been a GMO farmer and kind of quite assertive about it. And as the vice chair of the Ag Committee, my concern is apparently Cregan is going to be stepping down. She would become chair of the Ag Committee next year. I'd want to really know, given the fact that we have such a crisis, how she will, what she will do for to improve the status of farmers in agriculture. We get 0.4% of the state's budget, and I think it's incumbent upon the chair and vice chair of the Ag Committee to be much more aggressive in stating their case to the rest of the legislature to make sure that we build the alternative. We've allowed agriculture to just collapse over the years, underfunded, inadequate in many respects, and now is the time we've got to really do something totally assertive in agriculture. So Maui County is looking pretty good. At least they've allocated $8 million for next year, $2.5 million in microloans to farmers. We need a massive program at the state level to begin to revive agriculture for many reasons. There's a group now called Common Bond that's trying to get a $500 million a bond approved. They're not quite there yet. It'll be more developed next year to reduce the carbon impacts, to get us off fossil fuels. But a big component about it is reforestation and carbon sequestration in the soil. I certainly want to know where Lynn stands on something like that. And then, of course, she has to take a look at her voting, explain her voting record and why she has so much support from the usual suspects, and what she would do differently in view of the crisis that we're in. So when she comes on, I do hope I have a chance to ask her some of those questions and look at her voting record. What you've done so far about people's voting record is very helpful. The state does not make it easy to see how people vote, and we should be able to look closely at their voting records and see how and ask her those questions. What votes did you make that were really positive for agriculture and for your community, and which ones, what bills do you oppose and why?
Mark, if I just may ask you a question then, that Lynn voted for HB 2677, this highly controversial water rights bill, and she voted yes for that in 2020.
Well, she
What
had to
comment?
because her entire district was, very strongly in favor of that. That was a very big issue for the district that she represents.
Would you have any other comments on some of the other initiatives that she passed, or anything that really she championed while she has been in the House of Representatives?
Unfortunately, I was tied up for hours on a Maui Tomorrow board meeting, and I didn't have a chance to review her voting record, but I will dig into it if we have a chance to interview her going forward.
Hi, Mark. Just one of the things that's come up over and over again as we've talked to different both candidates as well as representatives is one of the questions that we've asked is, do you believe or would you back the possibility of a Maui County Department of Agriculture, where we're able to start actually taking care of things locally? And up to this point, we've had a unanimous yes, resounding in many ways. So I just wanted to pass that piece of information on to you.
Yeah, that's going to Shane Sinensi's committee. And someone proposed today that, Dick Mayer, that you might even think in terms of a Department of Agriculture and Energy. But we need much more local control because the state is far away. And again, it's so heavily controlled by the game players in Honolulu that we really just don't get to the representation on this issue that we need. And we need somebody to kind of fight for the farmers. Is that going to be Lynn? Or would Walter really do a better job? I think.
Well, it's interesting whenever we're seeing the fact that we just found out that Lynn is leasing her lands, her Hawaiian lands on Molokai to Monsanto, and she's been buying up leases from many other people. And this is the question I would have for her is this indeed what? Because she's saying no, I'm farming myself. I kind of doubt that. Ipso facto, she's in the legislature. She's gone a long period of time. I'd really like to see, she's saying one thing, but in actuality, Monsanto is on her land right now.
It's a pretty severe indictment of what she really stands for. I'm still deep in this book on called Dirt on the Soil and Civilization, and it's very clear that agrarian societies preserve their soil through basic regenerative agricultural practices, remediating the soil, contour farming, and that industrial applications to soil is destructive of not only soil, but civilizations, because they give no value to the most important ingredient, which is the soil. They're just attacking it. That's what we see happening with Mahi Pono. They're taking an industrial approach and basically out there disking the soil, and you can see the what's left of soil on those fields blowing in the wind and blowing out onto the reefs. And so the Monsanto model is extremely destructive. And anybody who don't understand that doesn't understand the most fundamental thing about farming.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for that. And is there anyone else that would like to make comments about Lynn at this point in time? No? Have we covered all the bases?
I think so.
Okay, good.
Right there.
Thank you then for our team. And thank you for this discussion that we've had on State Representative District 13. We will start on May 19th. We are going to start the county council interviews. And at that time, this coming Tuesday, we're going to be interviewing for the Lanai seat. We have Matthew Mono, we have Alberta DeJetley, and we also have Gabe Johnson, and all three will be interviewed at that time. And then
Cool.
later on in the week, we'll have, then on the 21st, we'll have the Maui Council member race for Kahului. And there we'll have Tasha Kama as well as Deb Kihiwi.
Okay,
So-
I hope I can join you on Tuesday. Thanks so much for letting me jump in at the last minute. Aloha.
Aloha. And aloha team, is there any other last statements from anyone before we sign off? Okay, we will do that. Then again, check our website out, mauipononetwork.org, if you'd like to be more informed about our schedule and what's coming up. We have a lot of interviews coming up now for the county council, so stay tuned and be informed. Mahalo.